Before we show Defying Gravity, Katrina thought it'd be a good idea. I've been in the business now for about 34 years and have watched it shift. But the business in the United States, there used to be three major broadcasters, as you know, ABC, NBC, and CBS. And when I started out in the business, you needed a 30 share. You needed at least a third of the viewing audience in order to stay alive as a show. If you didn't have a 30 the next morning and the rating, you were done. It was over. Now a 5 will keep you on the air, a 5 or a 6. Cable has just taken that and spread it out a million different ways. What that means to you is it means that there are probably some opportunities now. But 30 years ago, there were these three monoliths, these trigoliths. Anyway, but these powers that were very difficult to get into. And once you got into the system, then you kind of were brought up into the system. I was brought up through the system, and as a filmmaker and as a writer. And the more experience you got, the larger the shows got, the more chance you got to make shows and to create shows, and you're brought up in the system. Now, as it spreads out, I think there are a lot more opportunities out there, but there are still residuals of these big three powerful networks. It's tough to get in a U.S. show. U.S. shows are incredibly expensive. The show that I'm going to show you here is a show that we tried to make for about $1 million less than a usual U.S. show. Right now, U.S. shows are costing about $3 million to $3.2 million U.S. per episode. They're making usually 22 episodes a year. So it's big business. Running a show is big business. This show we made for net, after Canadian rebates, about 2.4 million U.S. Man, that's low budget. We made 13 episodes, and we were able to do it with co-financing with ProSieben, BBC, and CTV. We made the shows, and FTVS in the States, Fox Television Studios. We were able to make the shows outside of a U.S. network and then brought it back in. Just recently, ABC bought the show. It works to their advantage now because they can't afford to what they used to do, which was develop all their shows themselves. In that case, they would go to writers like me, who generally were under contract, and they would look to lay off those expensive contracts by having us write them and us produce them. That was the way they laid off our salaries. They also were able, by holding us to these deals, keep us from the other networks. They were able to get all the best writers that they liked for their network and buy them, and then that was the factory. And that's changing now. They can't afford to make those deals anymore. And so guys like me are floating around and putting together deals to do Defying Gravity outside of the network. But it was very, very difficult if you were starting. If we were having this meeting 5 years ago, I'd say you don't stand a chance to get in on a U.S. network. It's just impossible. Now I think there are going to be opportunities. In the next 5 years, certainly. I guess we can show Defying Gravity. What did I say about, what did I say? Style of shows. Yeah, the styles of shows that we make in the U.S. It's a very different type of show than you guys do here. You guys are used to doing maybe 6 shows in a series, 6, 8, something like that, and so your needs for staff and writing are considerably different. You tend to have story editors, and the writers are all separate and all individual, and then you have them do scripts. In the States, because you're trying to do 13 or 22 episodes, that just isn't practical. What you need to do, what we do, is we hire a staff of up to 8, sometimes up to 12. Gray's right now has 12 writers on staff. And we get together in a big room, and we break the stories. We all get together, and the showrunner will have a pretty good idea of where they want to go in the series. And we'll have, okay, in episode 1 we're doing this, and this character goes through this arc this season, this character goes through this arc, this character goes through this arc. I have ideas for these 8 episodes. Let's talk. And then the writers all contribute, and we all get together as a team. And we flesh out the characters, we flesh out the stories, we put them up. We have a lot of our rooms, our writers' rooms are just our big white dry erase boards, and we write plots down on them, beat out episodes, and then as the showrunner, I'll assign them to certain writers, and they'll go off and write them, and I bring them notes, and they talk to other writers, and then at the end I may rewrite them, I may not rewrite them, but it's all done in the spirit of teamwork. There's a great camaraderie. We all go out and get drunk together. We're together 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day, sometimes more, and you feel like a team. It's like your sports team. I think that it's a wonderful way to write. I think that in terms of adapting to do a new a network show or even a U.S. cable show, that's something that if you guys aspire to do that, you will have to adapt to do that. I don't think you do 13 episodes. When I started, you did 13 episodes much of the way you did them here. You had a story editor, and freelance writers would come in and they'd parse out the scripts. I don't think there's as much continuity. There's not a lot of continuity, and you get different writing styles, and it doesn't make for a consistency for a long arc series. And certainly, our series go maybe 13 episodes a season, but a lot of times 22, and for 5 or 6 or 7 years. The ideas that we pitch to the networks have to be sustainable for 5 or 6 or 7 years. If they aren't, they won't be bought. And you have to, if you're pitching one of those networks, you better have an idea and better be able to show them, how many story engines your show has, and how many directions it can move, and why it will be sustainable for 5 years, and why people will want to watch it for 5 years. What I do as a showrunner is this job sort of developed around 1980, late 70s. Creators of shows, what happened is that the studios decided, and the networks decided, that they wanted to hold certain writers, the best writers of the thing. So they started saying, okay, let's make a deal with them. Let's make a series deal with them. And the creator of the show became the de facto showrunner, became the head of all the writers. In television is the power base. The stories are the power base. The stories attract the actors. The stories drive the show. Back then also, we all considered ourselves more filmmakers than we did just pure writers. There are now that sort of has split. In present day, there are writers like, for instance, David Kelly, who just write. David Kelly doesn't edit, doesn't do anything else. All he does is write on his shows. And there are showrunners like me who I try to do everything. I'm from meeting with my line producer, who is my physical producer, and working on getting the budgets down. I think it's important for writers to know what they have to do to scripts to make them workable and to make them shootable. I edit. The final cut is mine. The editing is the final rewrite. It's crucial to anything. I'm in the editing room. I meet with my composer on music. I dub the shows. I'm on the dubbing stage. And I write and I write and I write. And I'm on the stage when we shoot. I try to watch every master as it's being shot to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. You can't be there at all times, but it's sort of it's an exhausting but really invigorating job. I mean, you have withdrawal when it stops. You go, wow. You're relieved, but on the other hand, you're like, what do I do? What do I do now? Can
I just ask you, how many episodes you would write out of the series?
Out of this 13.